Hey everybody, welcome back to Truck and Roll. I've got a really cool video here for you today. We've got some new parts going on the Mach 1. Honestly, probably the first two things I should have done after getting the car, but you guys let me know in the comments and I appreciate all your feedback. So we're gonna dive into what I bought, what they are, why I'm installing them. Very simple modification. Additionally, we are getting ready for the first track day with the Mach 1. So I am going to my local road course next Wednesday. I'll talk about that later in the video, kind of what that entails. It's gonna be a very kind of easy transition into its first track day, nothing too crazy, but I will have it on a road course, so that'll be super cool. Also in this video, I do wanna talk about some long-term plans for the Mach 1. I really think that this is going to be an awesome project, and if things kind of go as I plan in the timing that I've planned, this may be one of the first Mach 1s that I've seen on YouTube or in social media yet that has any sort of forced induction. So we will talk about that later in the video, but first let's go ahead. I'll tell you what I bought and why I bought it, and then we'll get into the installation. Vehicle, you've probably heard about the downsides of blowby. Now, in short, what blowby is any modern car has a PCV system. You may have seen on older cars, there would be a breather on the valve covers, and that would allow any, pressurized oil vapor mixture to escape. The problem with that is it goes straight out into the atmosphere. It's not good for the environment. It can make your engine bay dirty. It's just not the best solution, but you got to do something with that pent up pressure. So what do modern cars do? They use a PCV system, which stands for positive crankcase ventilation. Now, in the stock form, what happens is when you need to vent excess pressure, generally from the valve cover area, the valve train, it just goes back into the intake tract. Now, over time, what that can do is cause a coating of oil and deposits on the back sides of your intake valves, inside your intake manifold, your throttle body, all that stuff. So to combat that, many companies have what is called catch cans or oil separators. So I'm gonna show you what I bought from JLT. This is right around 300 bucks for everything. You could do it for cheaper, but the benefit buying from JLT, one, they're an American company, and two, everything is just plug and play. So it should be a lot simpler than buying a DIY kit off of eBay and doing it yourself. That being said, if you are interested in doing a DIY thing from eBay with a very cheap oil separator, I have a video for that on my 97 Cobra. I bought one, I installed it. I also installed one successfully on my C10. So I'll post a little thumbnail here that you can take a look and see, and then look in the description. There'll be a link to that video if you want to go that route. But if not, if you want to use one that's made specifically for these cars, you can get one from JLT. They don't say whether or not this is specific for the Mach 1 because the Mach 1 is new, but I think it's going to work because they do list the bullet as being one of the options. So we'll see if the fitment works for the new 2021, if there's any differences. Hopefully not. Let's dive into it, unbox what you get when you buy the parts from JLT. So I'll go ahead and post a quick picture here if you want to see the part numbers. There are separate ones for the driver and passenger side. So let me zoom out. Okay, that's better. So I don't really know which one I'm diving into first. This would be the driver's side. So on the driver's side, you're going to get instructions. Hold on to these, and you're going to get the catch can itself, and these are going to have the connectors which should clip straight in. Looks like this one has a bracket as well. You get some stickers, but basically what happens is, your pressurized oil air mixture comes through here, and there's a little spot in here that knocks the oil down. So the oil will collect down here, and you could probably get away with one. I'm going to do one for both sides of the engine, and we'll talk about that, why, and I kind of alluded to that earlier with the plans I have for the car. But you could do one on either side, and that's better than nothing. But if you have the funds, go ahead and get both. Over time, these will fill up. You can unscrew this and then just pour that back out, back into your motor, however you want to do it. But basically, this will keep pressurized, oil vapor from going back into your intake where you don't want it. So that is the one for one side, and then we've got the one for the other side here. All right, got the box open. Here we go. So you got the one for the other side. And just at first glance here, some of the things I like about this is you can see everything has been it's like a molded, kind of like they probably press it on and maybe heat it to shrink it down. So you have no funny clamps here, no kind of worm clamps. I always think those look cheap. And then again, you have the specific style that's meant to clip in and and match your existing parts from Ford. So pretty cool. I'll go ahead and unscrew one of these so you can see what the inside looks like. So I've got it unscrewed. This is a nice aluminum anodized piece with some knurling on the bottom. The bottom of this is just, you know, just a catch base, nothing interesting there. The top though, this is the whole point of it. So you're basically allowing the mixture to flow through, but then this is going to be catching and knocking down that oil, and it's going to be collecting, you know, down the base here. And this doesn't look very big, but, you know, ideally you're not catching a ton of oil very quickly. This is something you change, you know, every 2,000 miles, you open this thing up and then just pour the oil back into the fill in your engine. You got a nice O-ring here to make a good seal. And yeah, these should be pretty similar. Real nice threads. All right, I've had a chance to look at the directions really fast, and I'll just say a few things. So obviously this is for 2018 through 21 Mustang GT and Bullets, not for the Mach 1, but that's okay because the Mach 1 is very similar to the Bullet. Just a few things off the bat. There is no engine cover on the Mach 1, unlike the GT, so you can just skip that step where you go ahead and remove it. For the passenger side, which is what we're going to do first, this is the hose that we are talking about. Now they're going to make mention of having to undo a connector at the throttle body. I believe this is what they're talking about, and they want you to route the new one up underneath there. So they say it's maybe easier to unplug this first, and then you can go ahead and plug that in. Although these things do look like they are on pretty tight, you can swivel. So that's one of the things they say in the instructions. You can swivel these, and then I believe to release them, chances are you just probably pull on that right there, and that releases it. So we'll go ahead and pull the other one off, try and install this, and let's see how it goes. Let's try this one first. All right, that's off. All right. Here we go. That is the stock one is off. And I'm not gonna lie, it's a little bit different shape than what it came with, but hopefully we can make it work. Just in case you don't believe me, this thing has 1,000 miles on it. You can already see the oil going through, and it's clear. If you come over here and you look, you can also see it right there. So this is definitely something that, you know, you really want to catch this early, and that way you prevent that gunking up from happening. This is really something that, you know, all things considered, you could do this day one. But let's go ahead and get it installed on this side. I think this is the easier of the two sides, and then we'll go and switch over to the driver's side. I did wind up unplugging this. To unplug this, you take this right here, pull it back, and then from the bottom, pull it, and this thing will come off. When you're done, just press, obviously, the connector back on, and then lock this. Nothing special here. These just click into place. You'll feel them. You'll hear an audible click when that part comes in, and then this is just gonna rest just right here. And then on this side, when you go to change your oil, you're still gonna be able to get to your fill location. Mine has like a little dimple right here. I don't know if that's on purpose or not. But yeah, pretty clean overall. And again, if you take a step back here and you didn't know what you were looking at, you probably wouldn't even know that that was there. So as I'd mentioned, the driver's side is a little bit more in detail. You do have a bracket here, and basically they give you some hardware. It's actually really funny in the instructions. I'm like, why do they have two nuts? And I'm reading the instructions here, and it says, oh, there's 2 1/4-20 nuts, one in case you drop one. So that's pretty funny. They got you covered. But basically, you got the oil separator, you have the hoses. Keep in mind which one's the long one and the short one, because that is crucial in the instructions. This is gonna mount to the top over here, and then there's gonna be a nut that captures off of the strut tower. And then another thing which does not apply to the Mach 1s as far as I can tell, but I guess on the regular GTs, there is a sound tube that is routed back to the firewall just to get you that intake noise. I don't know, for Mach 1s, maybe they figure you're gonna put some headers or something on this. It's gonna be too loud to hear the intake anyway. But as far as I can tell, I don't see the sound tube. Obviously, this has the GT350 intake, so it's a little bit different. So I would say just go ahead, hold on to these parts right here. I don't think you're gonna need them, so disregard these two. You will need this, you will need that. One of the things it talks about here in the instructions is removing the strut tower brace, and I think the reason they're telling you to do that is I believe you're trying to get to this spot right here. Now, I've got relatively large hands, but nonetheless, I kind of want to avoid removing this strut tower brace if I can. So I think instead I'm just gonna fight it and see if I can't get it removed. And really the only reason I say that is over here on the passenger side, looks like there's some wiring or something that goes up here. And I can just foresee this being a pain in the butt to sneak out. So we're gonna try and do it without removing this. And if that proves to be too difficult, then we'll go ahead and just remove the strut tower brace and install it the way the instructions say. Push up on that and pull it away and it should pop loose just like so. And over here, it's gonna be the same deal, although the clip is on the bottom, and this will come out. The nut and everything to install the part that you just see over there, you will need, I'm gonna try and do it with a stubby 7/16 and a 7/16 ratcheting, and then we'll just see if that works or not. What I'm gonna do is try to install it, but not have it super tight. This should allow me to swivel this a little bit, and that way I can see where the hoses wanna lie, and then I'll go back up at the end there and try and tighten it up. So let's try that approach. This is one of those steps where there's not really a 100% correct way to do it. You're just gonna have to put the hose in there and try and route everything how you feel comfortable. I would recommend you get it in there, get one side hooked in, probably the valve cover side, put the screws in to hold it in place, then just start finagling it until you're comfortable with how it sits. Okay, before I tighten up the bracket, I just wanna go over kind of the fit and finish in my opinion. I certainly think here on the passenger side, just routing it underneath this is not a big deal, super easy. I will also say that unlike the instructions, you do not need to take the strut tower brace off. You can get under there with a 7/16. The actual like material quality of everything you receive is really nice. No issues with the threads here. Make sure you do tighten these two up before you install it because they do kind of ship loose, so make sure you tighten that. This one clicks in okay. I found it best to go underneath this line right here. The only thing I'll say negative about this is the line going over to the intake side. Basically, it works, but it's as if this swivel, which is kind of like a preset thing, you can't go in and adjust that. I wish you could. It's almost like it needs to be swiveled at another angle. And I think the problem is that the airbox on the Mach 1 or the GT350 is just larger. So like I said, you snake it around, it fits. I wish it was a little different, but overall, for something that's not listed for the Mach 1, you can make it work. In terms of overall difficulty on this one, super easy. If you are even a little bit mechanically inclined, you should be able to knock this out from unboxing it to actually having it on the car in 30 minutes or less. It is not difficult. I made a couple comments on the driver's side fitment. It's not a huge deal. I might come back later and try and play with the routing. I would say, I guess in terms of price, maybe a little expensive, but you know, 30 minutes, it all snaps into place. Now, if you are trying to be a little more frugal, I just thought of this. You could take the original lines right here, you could take a razor blade real carefully and slice that, and I bet you could pull this tube off and reuse these. And then if that's the case, I'm guessing that something like, I don't know, 1/2-inch heater hose would probably work. And basically what you would do at that point is you could buy any catch can that you want and just you reuse the stock ends, slide them on, buy yourself some hose clamps, and you'd probably be in this thing for, I don't know, what are they online now? Like 30 bucks a piece on Amazon. So $60, say another, you know, 5 bucks, 10 bucks for clamps, maybe some sort of bracket. I don't know. You could probably be in it for 1/3 of the price if you want to do it yourself. But this does look really nice and clean. It has a stock look to it. So I will leave that up to you kind of on how you want to handle it. But I'll be excited to drive this thing. This is going to make no performance difference, but you know, it's got 1,000 miles on it now. I'll go check it another 1,000 and we'll see how much oil is collected inside of there. Let's talk about the first track day. So we are very fortunate, my wife and I, that we have a track that is very close to our house. It's less than 45 minutes away. It's called Utah Motorsports Campus. If you're in the Utah, Wyoming, kind of Idaho area, you should really check this thing out. They have what's called, they used to be called Wide Open Wednesdays. Now it's called Amateur Track Days. And basically after work on Wednesdays, you can go and take your car on the track. Now, they have beginner and advanced. So I've done a few track days there, but I think I'm still technically in the beginner realm. You got to do like 4 or 5 track days before you can bump up to advanced. So in beginner, what happens is they release you on the track one at a time and you just go for 1 lap. So you're on a road course. It's not an autocross, but it's just 1 lap at a time. And they try to space you out between the car in front of you check out some of my videos from before where I have my 97 Cobra on the track. It's gonna be very similar to that. So this will be a really good shakedown for the car because it's only one lap at a time, so you don't really need to worry about things overheating. I'm not gonna go and change out my brake fluid or anything like that yet. Be pretty basic. Once you do 5 of those, they allow you onto the track with other cars. There's passing in designated zones. It's much more like a real track day, but it's still after work and it's only $50. So Utah Motorsports Campus is awesome. If you guys have done track days before, you probably know that track days are a lot more expensive than 50 bucks. So when you bump up to the advanced, you have kind of the same amount of time out on the track. It turns out to be like an hour. Even when I was doing single laps, I got like 10 laps in, so I can only imagine how many you get in the advanced sessions. But like I said, you got to do 5 of the beginners before you can do advanced. So we're gonna do that on Wednesday. I'm gonna be in the Mach 1. My wife's gonna be in the ZL1. This will be our first time tracking both of these cars, but not our first time on this track. So stay tuned. There will be a video next week, give or take, with that footage. But let's dive into the fun stuff because I alluded to something very big here at the beginning of this video. I alluded to forced induction. And this, so my wife's Camaro, if you're not familiar, that's a Camaro ZL1, the 6th gen, that's the LT4. So it's a 6.2 liter, it's got direct injection, it's got a supercharger, it makes about 650 horsepower. Very cool, very fast car from the factory. I myself have owned multiple supercharged cars, but both of those were centrifugal. So I've kind of gone down that road twice. Once with the blue Mustang, but it was a 2004 2-valve, and another time with the Corvette Z06. So wildly different cars, made wildly different horsepower numbers, but very fun. And I'm familiar with installing those kits myself, specifically like your ProCharger, Vortec, Paxton, that kind of style. So I've kind of gone down that road. I don't think I want to do that for this car, although I do think it would be a very good way of making power, and I want to explain why and just zoom in on the engine and kind of show you something about the Mach. Centrifugal supercharger, I should say. You would wind up reusing a lot of the components which make the Mach 1 the Mach 1. So this has the Shelby GT350 intake manifold, it has the GT350 throttle body, and the cold air intake. So normally the cold air intake will go away, but having that GT350 throttle body and intake manifold would probably be a benefit for centrifugal supercharger because the boost curve rises linearly with RPM. So these are generally made to make power in the upper RPM ranges. So having a centrifugal supercharger on a Mach 1, you'd reuse a lot of the parts that make it a Mach 1, and I think they would complement each other well. That is in contrast to the type of supercharger which is on this car, which is a positive displacement supercharger, and that one takes place of your intake manifold. So if you were to install like a Whipple or a VMP onto a Mach 1 or a Bullet, you're really removing all of the parts that make the engine different, right? Because the intake manifold comes off with the supercharger, it's gonna have its own throttle body, it's gonna have its own intake, all of that goes away. Not saying it would make great power on a Mach 1, but to me, I just wouldn't do it because why buy the Mach 1 if you're gonna take all the parts off it? Okay, so we just talked about superchargers and I kind of alluded to the fact that I'm not gonna do either of those. So what am I gonna do? Well, what I'm gonna do is twin turbocharge the Mach 1. 2 styles, there's a top mount, and the top mount basically is gonna have your turbos right here. And then the sleeper kit goes up underneath the car. Don't think so much like an STS turbo or remote mount. It's really not like that. It's not the back of the car. There's not a ton of charge piping. Effectively, it's just right. It's probably even closer, honestly, than the top mount kit in terms of the distance from the turbocharger to the heads. But they're mounted underneath the car and it's really slick. You can't even tell that it has it. You pop the hood, it looks totally stock. And it's not unless you're on a lift and you know exactly where to look that you'll see those twin turbos. But the cool thing about twin turbos, in my opinion, is you have the ability to turn the boost up or down on the fly. So you can drive this thing around on wastegate pressure, making 5 to 6 pounds of boost, somewhere in the 500-ish wheel horsepower range. And then you can crank it up with the press of a button on your boost controller all the way up to whatever is kind of safe with the stock fuel system, probably somewhere in like 750 to 800 wheel horsepower range. Obviously you're changing injectors and the fuel pump, but not like totally redoing everything to a returnless system. So that is kind of where I'm headed for this. And I'll get to reuse all the stuff, like I said, that makes the Mach 1 to Mach 1. I mean, the throttle body will stay, the intake will stay. This will go away, the cold air intake, but that kind of gets lost in any kind of forced induction kit you do. But I think it'll be really cool, and I've never done it before. Okay, so what's the timing on all this? Well, earliest I can see myself pulling the trigger buying it is around Black Friday if there's any sales. Otherwise, it'll probably be early next year. But in the meantime, you'll have a ton of content of me driving this, putting more miles on it, and all that fun stuff, taking it to the track. And then maybe if I really get the itch and there's some good deals going on, I'll pull the trigger sooner. But then we'll have a whole build of everything going on. I'll be doing it all myself in my garage. And I'll show you guys that you can do it too, or at least we'll see. But it's not my first time installing forced induction, so I don't think it'll be all that hard. All right, cool guys. That just about wraps up this video. I'm gonna try and put another one out where I go through some of the cool features. I'll show you launch control. I'll show you no lift shift. I haven't used either of those yet. And well, obviously the videos from the track. So the next video will be very driving heavy. This one was more instructional and install related, but I think you guys probably like both. So I really appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate all the comments. So please drop me that like, subscribe to the channel. There's more content. I've got 97 Cobra content if you're Ford guys. I've got C10 content if you're GM guys. Heck, I've even got a couple videos on an old POS Toyota. So there's everything here on the channel for you guys. Just hit that like, hit that subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Truck and Roll.